everyone. I know that we're out of school for a little while, so I thought that I would try to put together the notes on chapter 7 since I'm not going to obviously see you guys this week. And that way, if there's something you don't understand, maybe I'll explain it. And if you're still confused about something, then just text me on Remind and I'll try to answer your questions. So, when we're looking at chapter 7 in The Great Gatsby, we talked about how in the last chapter Daisy and Gatsby meet, and this is kind of the beginning of their affair. Well, at this time, Gatsby stops having his parties. He dismisses all of his servants, and everybody's like, "What?" And he makes the comment right around here that where did it? I heard Nick says, "I heard you. I hear you fired all of your servants." And Gatsby responds, I wanted somebody who wouldn't gossip. Daisy comes over quite often, pause, in the afternoons. Okay. So he doesn't want gossip. He wants privacy for them. Daisy invites Gatsby, Jordan, and Nick to her house, knowing that Tom's going to be there. And we got to ask ourselves, why on earth would she do this? And there are lots of different answers, but she's kind of forcing things to a head, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. We'll have to decide a little bit later. Nick, as narrator, makes a point here for like several paragraphs to talk about the weather. It's hot. He says it's broiling. The warmest day of the summer. He talks about people sweating. Hot, said the conductor. Is it hot enough for you? And it goes on and on. Okay, so Fitzgerald's not going to write a whole bunch of paragraphs on how hot it is if he doesn't want us to take notice of that. That it's hot, and we know what that's like. We're in Georgia. But heat tends to bring out tempers, and we get a lot of that in this chapter. Scroll on down. Everybody's at Tom and Daisy's house, and Tom goes to leave the room, and she goes over and she kisses Gatsby on the mouth, just really forcing their affair onto everybody else. Obviously, Tom's not in the room. She doesn't do it quite that much. But her daughter comes in, and Gatsby says, let me find it. Daisy says, how do you like your mother's friends? Do you think they're pretty? Where's Daddy? Okay, this is just like knife in the heart to Gatsby. Hold on, I got a cat crawling on me. And the Gatsby is kind of astounded because at this moment, sorry, my cat needs some love. He has to face facts that Tom and Daisy have a life together, where he wants to repeat the past and make things like it was before. He can't do that completely because they do have this child together. At one point during this very awkward luncheon, Daisy looks at Gatsby and she says, oh, where is it? You always look so cool. She had told him that she loved him, and Tom Buchanan saw. He was astounded. His mouth opened a little, and he looked at Gatsby and then back at Daisy as if he had just recognized her as someone he knew a long time ago. As she tries to play it off, saying that he looks like a man in an advertisement. But Tom's figured it out, and it's not what she said so much as how she says it. He hears the love in her voice for Gatsby, and he's trying to figure out what is going on. How did this happen? So, all right, we're going to go to town. Everybody's going to go to town. It's hot. We're going to go to town. We don't know what we're going to do. When they get to the cars, Gatsby says, "Shall we go in my car?" And we had this weird switch of cars. You take my coupe and let me drive your car to town. And so we end up with Tom and Nick and Jordan and Gatsby's car. And then we have Gatsby and Daisy in Tom's car. Okay. And Tom makes this comment. He says, "You think I'm pretty dumb, don't you? Perhaps I am. But I've made a small investigation of this fellow. I could have gone deeper." And he says, this is just really weird. All right. So Tom, Jordan, and Nick stop at Wilson's garage. Wilson comes out. "I'm sick. I've been sick all day. I'm all run down." And he says, he's talking about the car. "I can make some money on the other one." Tom says, "What do you want money for all of a sudden?" "I've been here too long. I want to get away. My wife and I want to go west." "Your wife does?" exclaimed Tom, startled. "She's been talking about it for years. I just got wised up to something funny the last 2 days." "Well, what do you think he just got wised up to?" "He's just figured out that his wife is having an affair, and it has made him physically ill." The irony here is that Tom just figured out the same thing about his wife. So you have these two men who are figuring out that their wives are having affairs, but they don't quite realize the connection that they have. Tom, with this, you got the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg looking over this whole thing. And again, that's going to come up again, but we've got to start trying to figure out why Fitzgerald would write the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg into this piece, because they've got to be symbolic. They're overlooking the scene. They're overlooking the Valley of Ashes. They're overlooking these people. So chapter 8, we're going to start really figuring that out. Now, Myrtle sees this whole scene. Okay, remember, you need to remember this for the next chapter. What is Myrtle seeing? She's seeing Tom and Nick with another woman in Gatsby's car. Okay, remember, she doesn't know who Daisy is. She doesn't know what Daisy looks like. Oh, there's a wasp. Sorry, y'all. I'm outside, and apparently all the critters are trying to get me today. She doesn't know what Daisy looks like. So here she is seeing Tom with this woman who she's going to assume would be Daisy. All right, so they all leave. They get into the city. They go to the Plaza Hotel. And it's this point that everything just explodes. Tom makes a smart remark to Daisy, at which point Gatsby tries to stand up for her. Why not let her alone, old sport? You're the one that wanted to come to town. And Tom kind of digs into Gatsby here. "That's a great expression of yours, isn't it?" said Tom sharply. "All this old sport business. Where'd you pick this up?" Okay, so then Tom comes, finally lays it all out. Let me find it. "I understand you went to Oxford." "Yes, I went there." "I told you I went there." "When?" "It was in 1919. I only stayed 5 months. That's why I really can't call myself an Oxford man. It was an opportunity they gave to some of the officers after the armistice. We could go to any of the universities in England or France." Remember, we talked about how Gatsby kind of choked on it when he said he was educated at Oxford. He doesn't say he's an Oxford man. And that's why he was only there for 5 months. And here, Tom lays it out. "What kind of row are you trying to cause in my house anyhow?" Gatsby says, all right, Daisy is just horrified. "He isn't causing a row. You're causing a row. Please have a little self-control." Self-control, repeated Tom incredulously. I suppose the latest thing is to sit back and let Mr. Nobody from Nowhere make love to your wife. Well, if that's the idea, you can count me out. Nowadays, they begin by sneering at family life and family institutions. Next, they'll throw everything overboard and have intermarriage between black and white. Okay, so we've already established that Tom is a racist. We did that early in the book. But look at the hypocrisy here. Sneering at family values. Um, he's the one who's been having affairs, multiple affairs, since the very moment that they got married. But it's different when it's his wife who's doing it. And so Gatsby throws it out that your wife doesn't love you. Do you hear? She only married you because I was poor and she was tired of waiting for me. It was a terrible mistake, but in her heart, she never loved anyone except for me. Um, and they go through this. Tom tries to play it off that Daisy just really doesn't know what she's thinking. Poor little woman. She does. Trouble is, sometimes she gets foolish ideas in her head and doesn't know what she's doing. And what's more, I love Daisy too. Once in a while, I go off on a spree and make a fool of myself, but I always come back, and in my heart, I love her all the time. So basically, all those times he was having affairs, he still loved Daisy. Daisy's response is, "You're revolting." I think we can all agree with that. Uh, so here we go. Gatsby says, "Tell him the truth, that you never loved him. That's all wiped out forever." And she says, "Well, how could I love him possibly? You never loved him." "I never loved him," she says with reluctance. Okay, and here Daisy says it. "You want too much. I love you now. Isn't that enough? I can't help what's past. I did love him once, but I loved you too." You see this word here, too? That word right there, that three-letter word, that destroys Gatsby. That destroys all of his dreams, all of his hopes. Because, and remember, in his mind, Daisy never loved Tom. Okay, and there's no room for that in his world. But she says two. Two means also. And look at what he says. "You loved me too," he repeated. Tom knows that he's won at this point. And he kind of taunts Gatsby. "We've got this." Daisy runs out. They bring out the drugs, bring up the drugstores and the bootlegging, and basically Tom sends Daisy off with Gatsby. Now, why would he do that? He knows he doesn't have anything to worry about with Gatsby anymore. He knows that Daisy's not going to leave him. He knows that Daisy may have had this affair, but it's just a little fling, and that she will come back to him. And so they all leave. Okay. We have these last paragraphs here. "It was 7 o'clock when we got into the coop with him and headed towards Long Island. Nick realizes that it's his 30th birthday. And he's thinking about the promise of a decade of loneliness, okay? Because in this world, he should be married and starting a family at this time. And he ends it with, "So we drove on toward death through the cooling twilight." Okay, that driving on towards death, is he talking about his death since he's turning 30? Is he talking about the death of relationships? Is he talking about death itself? All right, so it switches gears here and goes to Wilson, who has Myrtle locked upstairs. She's going to stay there to the day after tomorrow, and then we're going to move away. And Michaelis is trying to figure out what's happened. And he can hear Myrtle screaming upstairs, "Beat me, throw me down and beat me, you dirty little coward." And she manages to get out. She rushes out the door. Um, and then she's hit by a car. It says that Myrtle was killed instantly. She's basically ripped apart. Tom and Nick and Jordan come on the accident. And they're like, "Oh, let's go look," because that's apparently what people do. And so they go in and they see Myrtle's body, and Tom is trying to find out what happened. Otto hit her, instantly killed. She ran out in the road,